Did you know there was a man so feared in Hollywood that even the toughest actors would literally wet themselves if they challenged him? This isn't an urban legend. It's the story of Gene LeBell, the pink guy-wearing grappler who could bring boxers and movie stars to their knees without ever losing his smile. His mere presence could shift the energy in a room. He didn't need to shout or show off. His stare alone told you that you were standing before a man who had mastered both the art of violence and the art of self-control. Gene LeBell wasn't your average guy. He was an anomaly, martial might, where warriors live forever. Born in Los Angeles in 1932, Gene grew up in a family straight out of a fighting manual. His mother, Aileen Eaton, was a pioneering promoter of wrestling and boxing, organizing hundreds of events at the legendary Olympic Auditorium, where icons like Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Robinson, and Judo Gene LeBell himself once performed. Surrounded by bloody brawls and roaring crowds, Gene wasn't overwhelmed. He absorbed it all. By age 7, he was training seriously in judo, and it didn't take long for his talent to shine. He traveled to Japan and forged himself at the Kodokan, the original temple of judo, where he learned that technique could overcome strength and that pain was part of the journey. By the time he was 20, Gene had already become a 2-time national judo champion in the U.S., but he wasn't satisfied. Judo felt too limited. He wanted to blend styles, to break conventions, so he dove headfirst into professional wrestling, a space where he could mix his judo skills, brute strength, creativity, and charisma. And if LeBell had anything besides technique, it was presence. Standing over 6 feet tall and weighing nearly 220 pounds, he had the face of a lumberjack and the humor of a clown. He wore a pink guy to mock everyone else's ego. While others took themselves seriously, Gene laughed. But when it was time to fight, he became a machine. In 1963, Gene accepted one of the greatest challenges of his life, to fight Milo Savage, a professional boxer who claimed judo was useless in a real fight. The match, broadcast on national television, was far from fair. The Utah Athletic Commission imposed unequal rules. Savage wore gloves and concealed weights inside them, while Gene was banned from kicking. It was a trap, but Gene endured, dodged, and waited. Then at the right moment, he took Savage down with flawless technique, controlled him like a puppet, and put him to sleep with a chokehold. For many, this was the first modern MMA fight, decades before the UFC was even born. And what did Gene say afterward? No bragging, just a simple line. That was fun. That was Gene. He'd crush you and smile while doing it. Hollywood took notice. Gene had the look, the skills, and most importantly, the realism no one else could offer. He became one of the most prolific stuntmen in film history, appearing in over 1,000 movies and TV shows. He even served as president of the Stuntmen's Association of Motion Pictures. He worked with Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris, Charles Bronson, Clint Eastwood, teaching them all how to truly fight. There's a legendary story with Bruce Lee. During a shoot, Gene picked Bruce up and carried him like a child. Bruce, laughing nervously, didn't resist. Years later, Lee incorporated grappling into Jeet Kune Do, and often credited LeBell for opening his eyes to close-quarters combat. But while Bruce respected him, Steven Seagal wasn't so wise. During the filming of Out for Justice in 1991, Seagal claimed it was impossible to make him tap. He said no one could choke him unconscious. Gene heard this and offered a little demonstration. Minutes later, Seagal was on the floor, unconscious, and, according to witnesses, had soiled his pants. Seagal has always denied it. Gene never fully confirmed it, but never denied it either. He simply said, "Some people say I did it, some say I didn't, but one thing's certain, I was there." Legend or truth, no one else on set dared to challenge him again. Because Gene wasn't just power, he was physical intelligence, pure technique, and martial arts taken to the extreme. In his dojo, he trained thousands, from veiled Judo fighters to future UFC champions. Ronda Rousey called him her martial arts grandfather. He also trained Gokor Chivichian, one of the world's most feared grapplers, and actor Ed O'Neill known from Modern Family, was one of his students. Gene LeBell had a rule: don't train to be invincible, train to be inexhaustible. His training was brutal, but fair. He never humiliated anyone. He simply showed them how far they were from who they thought they were, and then helped them close the gap. His teaching style was as direct as his fighting. He'd throw you to the ground, choke you out, and say, "See, you learn faster this way." Few know that Gene helped the FBI design physical control tactics for hand-to-hand combat. He also trained SWAT teams and celebrity security squads. But he never bragged. He used to say, "If you have to tell the world how tough you are, you're probably not that tough." He also left his mark on television, appearing in wrestling shows, entertainment programs, and interviews where he mocked himself. Once, he was invited to a talk show for a controlled submission demo. The host joked it was all fake. Gene smiled, applied a hold, and put the host to sleep on live TV. The cameras cut, the audience cheered, and Gene, ever the gentleman, apologized in case he'd gone too far. He was brutal, but polite, lethal, yet lovable. His personal library was filled with books on martial arts, anatomy, philosophy, and comedy. He loved absurd jokes and always carried a notebook full of one-liners. One of his favorites: "The difference between a good hold and a bad one is that the good one you don't see coming." Gene was also a writer. He published several books on martial arts and self-defense, written with a sarcastic, no-nonsense tone and full of practical advice. His manuals are still used today in police academies and grappling gyms around the world. And then there's his story with Muhammad Ali. Though they never fought, they met through Gene's mother, who had promoted Ali in L.A. Ali once told him, "If we had fought, you would have choked me before I could say my name." To which Gene replied, "And you would have knocked me out before I could grab you." Even in his 80s, Gene kept training, not with youthful intensity, but with undying passion. He said daily movement was his secret to longevity. When asked if he'd ever retire, he replied, "Retire from what? From being myself." Gene LeBell died on August 9th, 2022, at the age of 89. But he left behind a generation of fighters, actors, and everyday people who learned a vital lesson from him. True strength isn't about winning. It's about getting back up after falling and training when no one is watching. Gene LeBell was a warrior who shattered myths, egos, and limits. A pioneer who knew rules could be broken if you knew what you were doing. A man who didn't need titles to be a master. Today, his legacy lives on in the octagon, on the tatami, on movie sets, and in every person who, after being submitted, stood up smiling and said, "Thanks, Gene. I needed that." So if you ever see someone wearing a pink don't laugh. You might be looking at the heir of a legend, a man who fought like a bear and taught like a sage. Gene LeBell, the warrior no one dared challenge twice, and no one will ever forget.